The diplomatic vessel carrying Ambassador Thackrell of the Zorathian Empire trembled as it docked at the newest human colony station, Frontier's Edge. Thackrell's 6 eyes blinked in succession, a nervous habit his species displayed when facing potential danger. The briefing he'd received before this assignment had been clear. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and worst of all, they formed inexplicable bonds with the galaxy's most lethal creatures. As the airlock hissed open, Thackrell stepped onto the station with his security detail flanking him. The human greeting committee stood waiting, their faces arranged in what his cultural database identified as friendly smiles. He found the expression unsettling, the way their teeth showed like predators preparing to strike. "Welcome, Ambassador," said Commander Sarah Chen, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Thackrell touched it briefly with his manipulator appendage, fighting the instinct to recoil. Humans generated an uncomfortable amount of body heat. "Thank you for receiving me," Thackrell replied, his translator converting his chemical signals into audible speech. "The Zorathian Empire wishes to discuss the territorial boundaries near the Kelvin sector." "Of course," Chen said. "But first, let me show you around our colony. We're quite proud of what we've built here." Thackrell wanted to refuse, to get straight to business, but diplomatic protocol demanded he accept. They began walking through the station's main promenade, and he had to admit the humans had created something impressive. The colony housed over 50,000 souls, with gardens growing under artificial sunlight and children playing in designated recreation areas. It was one of those children that changed everything. A small human juvenile, no more than 8 cycles old by Thackrell's estimation, came running down the corridor. The boy had brown hair that stuck up in odd directions and wore a bright blue shirt with some kind of earth creature printed on it. But it wasn't the child that made Thackrell's respiratory system freeze. Walking calmly beside the boy, connected by a simple leather leash, was a creature that made Thackrell's survival instincts scream in terror. The honey badger. Thackrell had read the reports. Every species in the known galaxy had read the reports about Earth's fauna. The galaxy maintained extensive databases on human companion animals, and the honey badger held a special place in those files. A creature that attacked lions, survived cobra venom, and possessed a documented case of escaping from maximum security containment 6 times in a row. A creature so fearless and aggressive that even humans, who befriended everything, had historically feared it. And this human child walked beside one like it was nothing. "Mom! Mom!" the boy called out, running toward Commander Chen. The honey badger trotted alongside him, its small black eyes surveying everything with what Thackrell could only describe as calculated malevolence. "Tommy, I told you to stay in the residential section," Chen said, but her tone carried affection rather than anger. "But Rascal wanted to explore," Tommy said, scratching the honey badger behind its ears. The creature made a sound that Thackrell's translator couldn't identify, but it seemed pleased. Thackrell's security detail had immediately formed a protective barrier around him, their weapons not quite pointed at the honey badger, but clearly ready. The human security personnel noticed, but didn't react with alarm, which somehow made everything worse. "Is that?" Thackrell's voice came out as barely more than a chemical whisper. "Is that a Mellivora capensis? Oh, you know about honey badgers?" Tommy's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Yeah, this is Rascal. I've had him since he was a baby. Dad found him orphaned on Earth and we raised him. He's super smart and really friendly once you get to know him." Friendly. The child had called a honey badger friendly. Rascal looked directly at Thackrell, and in that moment, the ambassador understood something profound. This wasn't just a dangerous animal. This was a creature that understood it was dangerous, that knew every being in this corridor recognized its lethality, and it simply didn't care. Rascal yawned, displaying teeth that could tear through armor plating, then sat down and began grooming himself. "Tommy, why don't you take Rascal back home?" Chen suggested gently. "The ambassador and I have important business to discuss." "Okay, Mom. Nice to meet you, Mr. Ambassador." Tommy waved cheerfully, then turned and walked away, the honey badger padding beside him without a care in the universe. The Krell watched them go, his mind struggling to process what he'd witnessed. A child. A small, vulnerable child casually walking through a space station with one of the galaxy's most feared creatures from one of the galaxy's most feared planets. And nobody found this unusual. "I apologize if Rascal startled you," Chen said as they resumed walking. "We should have warned you that some families keep exotic pets. It's quite common in human colonies." "Exotic pets," the Krell repeated, his translator struggling with his chemical distress. "Commander, that creature is classified as a Class 9 aggressive predator in 17 different galactic databases. The Vraxian Confederacy has a standing order to terminate them on sight. The Polarian Empire's military uses simulations of them to train special forces in survival scenarios. And you allow a child to keep one as a pet?" Chen's expression shifted to something the Krell's database identified as mild surprise. "Honey badgers aren't that dangerous. Sure, they're tough and they don't back down from a fight, but Rascal is well-trained and socialized. Tommy's had him for 3 years now. They're best friends." "Best friends," the Krell echoed weakly. They continued the tour, but the Krell barely registered anything else. His mind kept returning to the image of that small human child and the honey badger. The implications were staggering. If humans could form bonds with creatures like that, if their children could walk alongside them without fear, what did that say about humanity itself? The answer terrified him more than the honey badger had. Later, during the formal diplomatic meeting, the Krell found his attention drifting. Commander Chen presented reasonable proposals for the territorial boundaries, but he could barely focus. Through the conference room's viewport, he could see the station's residential section. Somewhere in there, a human child was probably playing with a honey badger, perhaps feeding it, or sleeping curled up next to it. "Ambassador Thackrell?" Chen's voice pulled him back to the present. "Do you have any concerns about our proposal?" Thackrell looked at the human commander, really looked at her. She carried herself with confidence but not arrogance. She was reasonable, diplomatic, and genuinely seemed to want a peaceful resolution to the border dispute. She was also a member of a species that thought keeping honey badgers as pets was normal. "Commander Chen," the Krell said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and I require complete honesty. How many other families on this station have creatures like the honey badger?" Chen blinked, clearly not expecting that question. "Well, Rascal is the only honey badger currently, but we have several families with other Earth animals. The Johnsons have a cassowary named Princess. The Rodriguez family keeps a Komodo dragon in their hab unit. Oh, and the Nakamura kids have a pet goose named Sir Honks-a-Lot, though honestly he's more trouble than all the others combined. The Krell's respiratory system nearly shut down. A cassowary, a Komodo dragon. And whatever a goose was, if it was worse than the others, he didn't want to know. These are all considered normal pets in human culture?" he managed to ask. "Pretty normal, yeah. Some colonies restrict certain species, but Frontier's Edge has always been more relaxed about it. As long as the animals are properly cared for and don't pose a risk to others, families can keep most Earth fauna." Chen paused, studying him with those unsettling human eyes. "Ambassador, is something wrong?" Everything was wrong. The entire foundation of Thackrell's understanding of interspecies relations was crumbling. The Zorathian Empire had been considering pushing harder on the territorial disputes, perhaps even escalating to shows of military force. They had calculated that humans, being relatively new to the galactic stage, would back down rather than risk conflict. But a species that kept honey badgers as pets, that raised their children alongside creatures that made grown warriors flee, was not a species that would back down from anything. "No," Thackrell said finally. "Nothing is wrong. Your proposals are acceptable. The Zorathian Empire will agree to the boundaries as you've outlined them." Chen's eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? Just like that? I expected more negotiation. No negotiation is necessary, your terms are fair. The Krell stood, gathering his diplomatic materials. I will recommend to the Emperor that we accept these boundaries and pursue stronger peaceful relations with humanity. As the diplomatic vessel prepared to depart, the Krell took one last look at Frontier's Edge through the viewport. Somewhere on that station, a human child named Tommy was probably playing with Rascal, maybe teaching the honey badger tricks or simply enjoying his companionship. The image should have been absurd, impossible even. Instead, it was a perfect representation of humanity's place in the galaxy. The Krell drafted his report to the Emperor during the journey home. He detailed the successful negotiation, the human colony's capabilities, and the recommendation for peaceful relations. But he also included something else, a section he marked as highest priority intelligence. Human threat assessment requires immediate revision, he wrote. Species exhibits unprecedented ability to form cooperative bonds with apex predators from their homeworld. Observed juvenile human, approximately 8 standard cycles old, maintaining close companionship with Mellivora capensis without fear or visible restraint beyond simple leather tether. Adult humans treat this as normal behavior, recommend avoiding all potential military conflict with humanity. A species that raises their young alongside such creatures cannot be intimidated through conventional means. The report sparked debate throughout the Zorathian Empire. Some called it exaggeration, others dismissed it as a cultural misunderstanding. But those who had served near human space, who had seen the reports from other species' encounters with humanity, knew the truth. Word spread through the galaxy's diplomatic channels. The story of Ambassador Thackrell and his encounter with Tommy and Rascal became something of a legend. Other species began filing their own reports. The Vraxians documented a human research station where scientists studied black holes while keeping Earth creatures called cats that knocked over expensive equipment for entertainment. The Polarians discovered that human military vessels often housed creatures called dogs that provided emotional support. But it was the honey badger story that resonated most strongly. A child walking beside a creature of pure fearlessness, both completely comfortable with each other, neither recognizing any reason for the situation to be unusual. 3 months after his visit to Frontier's Edge, Thackrell received a package. Inside was a handwritten letter from Tommy and a photograph. The picture showed the boy smiling broadly, his arms wrapped around Rascal, who looked as content as a honey badger could look. The letter read, "Dear Ambassador Thackrell, Mom told me you were really interested in Rascal. I wanted to send you a picture of us. Rascal is the best friend anyone could ask for. He's brave and loyal, and he always makes me laugh. I hope we can be friends with your people, too. Your friend, Tommy. P.S. Rascal says hello." Thackrell kept the photograph on his desk, where he could see it every day. It served as a constant reminder of the lesson he'd learned on Frontier's Edge. Humanity wasn't dangerous because they were aggressive or warlike. They were dangerous because they saw the most fearsome creatures in existence and thought, I could be friends with that. And somehow, impossibly, they were usually right. The galaxy had learned to fear many things over the millennia: black holes, quantum storms, entropic cascade failures. But nothing inspired quite the same existential dread as the sight of a human child strolling peacefully beside a honey badger, both completely at ease. While the universe held its breath in terrified awe,